Well, welcome back to Yoni Health Tech Podcast, and we have Monica Marquez. Monica, introduce yourself, please.
Sure. My name is Monica Marquez, and I'm the founder and of Flipwork, which is an organization that is helping companies reinvent how people think and do work in this new age of AI.
Okay. And what have you come across during your journey of AI? Everything is becoming more automated.
So, what I've come across in my journey of AI is working many, many years, a couple of decades in corporate America at various different companies. Companies have always been really good about workforce transformation in the sense that companies will evolve, they'll get new technologies, they'll, change the way that they are empowering people with tools. The difference with AI is shaking things up for people and disrupting things in a really disruptive way in the sense that it is changing faster than humans are used to changing. And so, what it's really causing is for people to somewhat resist it because of the uncertainty. The reality is that AI is making people have to reinvent the way they do work. And so that's really, really hard in that, in the past, transformation came at a cadence that people could adapt to, and it still may be uncomfortable, but people were like, okay, I'm used to this. AI is a little bit of, things are changing faster than people know how to change, and it is really kind of, in a sense, also causing people to think about what is it, how is this going to impact me, where they're actually, it's shaking the core of their identity and their value and how they actually do work. And so I think that's the difference of really trying to get people to understand, how do we start to change as quickly as AI is disrupting, and how do we work with AI instead of against AI.
Wow. What about human creativity, right? Because now we can do a thesis in 5 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
It's take 3 months. How can we
Yes.
preserve the human element without throwing out the baby with the bathwater, so to speak?
Exactly. I mean, if you think about in healthcare, what does AI fluency actually mean? And it means knowing how to collaborate with AI, not just use the tool, right? I mean, so we're so used to now, like, healthcare has always been evolving technologies, whether it's like new MRI machines or new machines that are testing and being more diagnostic. I mean, AI and mammograms now, being able to detect things that the human eye couldn't detect. Those are things that we've been evolving, but we were just using them like tools. The difference with AI is that you can partner with it and it brainstorm with you, and really trying to, I think the future of care really depends on human AI partnership, right? Like clinicians and then algorithms that the AI is using. But what the AI cannot replace is the compassion, the empathy, the relationship that the human craves from another human, right? And so it's that where, we really have to think about, how do hospitals, nonprofits have, close the adoption gap, right? And so really thinking about where culture and workflow need to keep pace with all of the change. And that transformation is almost psychological, right? It happens only when the organization starts to rewire mindset along with workflow, but remembering that this is shifting the identity of clinicians, doctors, nurses, healthcare people, of really thinking about, how might I partner with AI opposed to really abdicating things to AI. And I think that's where a lot of companies, whether it's the finance industry, healthcare industry, you name it, you can't just abdicate and say, we're throwing all this money at the technology. The issue isn't the technology, it's the adoption of that technology by people. And it's no longer just, hey, I'm going to use this tool. It's, how am I going to coach this tool to give me the output or the answer, or help me solve this issue for the masses, right? And so it's the partnership thing where people aren't thinking about it as a partnership where you know, really have to work hand in hand with the AI, because the difference is that in the past we had to learn the tools. This time AI learns from the human. So the human has to be able to think about it in that way of how do I train, teach, coach, really get the best out of the AI in order for me to do my job, right? In a different way. I'm having to reinvent the way that I do the job.
So billing, coding, all that could be thrown out the window. Just have AI do all that part of it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Instead of well, what about insurers? Is isn't insurance really a human to human interaction versus all the paperwork? And I've been an insurance salesman for years, so I know that there's a lot of paperwork in that. But what about, you know, saying, hey, we know you've been diagnosed with, like, say, uh, um, cancer of some sort. You're now no longer eligible for a health care because you're a long-term risk. How does AI work with like cancer treatments and whatnot for insurance? Because insurance is a whole nother field.
How
Other
does it work?
And that's where we all get bogged down in, is the payment for things, not necessarily the treatment of things, right?
Right.
And then,
I mean, I think, you know, and again, it, you know, AI is new to everybody, and I think we're all learning as we go. And I think that's the other piece is that we have to kind of just test and learn, right? How might AI improve insurance claims? How might AI, you know, improve, you know, cancer treatments or detecting cancer, any of those things? What AI is really good at is synthesizing a lot of information, a lot of data very, very quickly and identifying patterns and trends very, very quickly, faster than we ever could, right? And so, but what we have to think about is that most of the time, from a human capacity, it would take us days and days, if not months, to pull all of that data together and synthesize it. And then once we had all the data, we had probably a smaller amount of time to actually synthesize, like make sense of that data, right? And analyze the data and things like that. What AI can do now is free us up from the gritty work that was felt very administrative and not very high value because it was just a matter of pulling all this data together, where now you have more time to actually analyze and come up with more qualitative answers, looking at trends and being able to make more informed decisions, right? And so if you think about it, in the insurance, I mean, you mentioned, David, that you've worked a lot in insurance, and I'm just ad-libbing here thinking about how might I, if I was an insurance person, how might I use AI to help me? Well, I would definitely try to pull all this information together and pull, you know, look at patterns. But there's always been the checks and balances with insurance, right? You could always appeal, you know, appeal you know, the insurance decision, so somebody else could, another set of eyes on it and things like that. But those appeal processes sometimes took a very long time because it was a human going through each case, kind of those types of things, where you might be able now to expedite the review of those appeals and be able to, you know, get through them faster, make decisions faster, look at trends faster, spot anomalies where, you know, hey, you know, even being able to, from a compliance or risk perspective, be able to say, let's look at these trends. We're starting to see some trends on this particular type of appeal or this particular type of claim and things like that. So I think there's pros and cons, right? Like some people might say, yeah, but AI could just start blanket, you know, disapproving or denying kind of claims and things like that. But at the same time, it depends on the boundaries that you are creating around the AI. And so a human, you can't abdicate, you can't just automate and say AI make all these decisions. You have to insert where people are going to bring their own discernment, their judgment, their lived experience, their zone of genius to be able to say, okay, AI helped me sort all of these things out, pointed out some trends I might have missed. Now I can make an informed decision and bring in the empathy and the kind of like, letter of the law, spirit of the law, like, hey, let's look at some things here, instead of being, bogged down and not being able to, do good quality work because you're exhausted from reviewing all of these things. And so there are going to be ways that we have to test and learn. What are things that would free up your time to do more qualitative decision making on cases, opposed to saying on any given day, if I'm giving true due diligence to all of these cases, I could probably churn out 20 decisions at the end of the day. With AI, I might be able to churn out 50, 80, because it's doing all of this other kind of grunt work. And so it's really individuals trying to figure out, where's the pain point? How can AI help me get through, get rid of some of this pain point area where I can focus on high value work, right? And so I think really people are going to have to step back and partner with AI, do some testing and learning, and then train it. And it's a little bit like having artificial intelligence being your artificial intern, getting the intern to do all this grunt work for you really, really fast, and then you still being the expert who is going to check the work that the intern gave you, if that makes sense.
Definitely. I know you're a fellow podcaster, so how do you use AI in your world of research? It's easier, definitely, than when we were kids. We had to go to the library, go to the card catalog, and look up whatever document, then document it, and have all kinds of trails and whatnot. Now that you have AI, it produces all that documentation, all your research, and now professors are saying, well, I know you use AI. So can people use AI in the professional world versus colleges and classrooms where they have to go out and search out their own research? How do you feel about that?
I think it's there's evolution, right? I mean, if we think about, like, this isn't the first time there's been a revolution of technology. If we think about the calculator, back in the day, they used to frown upon the calculator. You had to, they were like, you can't use the calculator on tests. You've got to show the long division and all of these types of things. If you think about now, I don't think anybody does a lot the long division anymore. There's all kinds of shortcuts, but most of the time people are using calculators or computers or tools or our phones to do those complex equations and things like that. I think AI is the same way, and I think there is merit in making sure that we know the source, or kind of like this is historically how we've done things, but how do we actually use AI to basically widen the aperture of the various different sources and resources? Because back, we're dating ourselves, right? But when I wrote my thesis, however many years ago in college, yes, I went and I did all of this research, card catalog, pulled all of these, various different resources. And it took me the better part of an entire semester to write my thesis. And I had a pretty extensive bibliography page. But just imagine of being able to leverage technology to say, take this bibliography page and tell me, are they balanced? Do I have enough of pro versus con, or contrasting data sources, or is even my bibliography biased because I was just going to I had a limited frame of reference. So I think there's things where there's pros and cons, but I think it comes down to transparency of just the way that we've always been taught, that you have to cite your sources, give the bibliography, credit, the people, mention that. I think you also have to say this, AI assisted me in pulling all of this data together, but here is the way that I did it. Here are the prompts that I used. Here were the parameters or the boundaries that I told AI. And I had AI check my blind spots. I had AI look at it for a balanced, a bias, or to remove the bias and those types of things. I think you end up with a better paper and a better kind of, just a better sources. But you, again, have to be that person who is telling the AI, where are my blind spots? Where should I, am I too one-sided with my sources? Should I, where are some more balanced sources, or where's some contrarian thinking that I'm missing because, I've drank the Kool-Aid and these are the sources that I know. And so those are the things where I think it improves it. And I think schools and administrations that are telling people where they're banning AI are doing their students a disservice, because the reality is, as soon as they graduate, they're going to be hired by organizations that are expecting them to know how to leverage AI, use discernment and judgment, and because at the end of the day, they're going to be using the AI, right? And so in the same vein, where if we weren't taught how to use the calculator and we graduated, and then a company hires you and says, hey, we churn out more work because we use calculators, you're going to be at a deficit because you don't know how to apply it. Same thing. I think the same logic goes in. You have to be able to know how to use it, but use it ethically in the right way. And it's all about transparency of not being ashamed to say, hey, I leveraged AI for this, and here were all the things I asked AI to do, and here's how I leveraged artificial intelligence, but I layered my authentic intelligence on top of it. And here's how come I've come out with a better solution, perspective, anything of that sort.
So what are the next steps for your company going forward for AI?
I mean, yeah, the next steps for my company is that, we have to, there's really almost no endpoint, right? We have to constantly be evolving. I mean, in this day and age, we have a saying here at Flipwork is that it's no longer survival of the fittest, it's survival of the fastest. How fast can you adapt? How can you make sure you stay on the forefront of all of the change that is happening? You have to kind of build that muscle of being able to move forward despite the uncertainty, and know that, I think the new currency is being able to pivot and adopt and adapt to all of the changes, and really embracing this idea of disrupting yourself before you get disrupted. Otherwise, you're going to get left behind, right? I mean, people, I tell people, we hear that everybody's saying AI is going to replace people, and that's not the case. It's not AI or the technology that's going to replace people. It's people who leverage AI are going to outpace or replace people who don't leverage AI and reinvent the way that they're doing work. So the old playbook, the old success playbook of here's how I used to do my work, gathering the data, doing the analysis. If you keep doing it the old way, you're going to get outpaced. And so that's the idea, is that you have to constantly keep changing. And so at Flipwork, we always, we want to flip the way we do work all the time. And so really partnering with AI every morning to say, hey, I have these 4 tasks I have to do. How might I accomplish them today, leveraging AI, and really not being afraid that the way I did it yesterday may change a little bit in the way that I do it today, but understanding I know that I've got to coach it to say, I know what the output needs to look like because I have expertise in this area. And so for Flipwork, it's really partnering with organizations to help their people start to think in that way, and getting people to understand that we have to reinvent ourselves at a faster clip than we're used to reinventing ourselves, and that the idea or the art of reinvention of the way you do work is actually going to be the new way of doing work. And so it's that, right? So Flipwork of really working with people to really partner. It's kind of like this agentic reinvention kind of thing of how do you leverage AI to do work every day, and that even goes for us.
Wow. There's a lot that you unpack there. So research is not research anymore. Research is more of putting commands and prompts in and then letting the LLMs do their magic and then bring all kinds of sources together to create a more comprehensive
Yeah.
picture or whatever presentation that you're providing. Here's the thing. You're obviously Spanish of descent. How do we
Yeah.
combine our
Mm-hmm.
knowledges across all cultures, all languages, to then become kind of like the new library that burned down in Egypt? How do we actually preserve that knowledge that we are all human beings, no matter where we are in the world? How do we do that?
Mm-hmm.
Preserve the humanity.
Yeah, I mean, and I think it's humans themselves have to be engaged with the technology in order to preserve their humanity, right? Because if we keep abdicating to the tool or to the machine learning, and the tool, the machine is constantly teaching itself, that is where, the bias in and of itself, which is the limited frame of reference, can start to, compound. And then you have a very kind of one, like a tunnel vision in a sense. And so my fear is that there's not going to be enough human interaction to ensure that the humanity and that the inclusion or the inclusive training of AI is going to get missed. And so for me, the human apathy to embrace AI is even more scary than the idea of, like, AI changing things. It's making sure that everybody who is training and teaching the AI is bringing their kind of unique, authentic perspective and making sure that those cultural nuances and all of those things are being, inputted into the system, opposed to it being limited, right? And so it's almost kind of like any data, right? The integrity of data is based on the inputs of that data. And if you have a finite type of individual putting in that data and you don't have diversity of thought being put into the data, that's where the data is going to get skewed. And so I feel like the more we encourage people to be part of the evolution of the AI, the more inclusive it's going to be. And so and we've seen that when I worked at organizations like Google. I mean, we started, back then, the whole initiative around product inclusion of, if we're building products, you need to build products for society and it needs to reflect society. So making sure that the people who are building the product reflect the people that they're building for, because there are nuanced things.
What do you foresee in the future with everything coming on board? With the large language models, with
Yeah.
everything coming in, with health data, which is privacy. There's privacy issues that come with that, right? Because no one wants to reveal their financial data. No one wants to
Yeah.
reveal their private data, how old you are, your social security numbers or whatnot. Yeah. How do we encourage people to say, hey, this is kind of like a 256 encrypted area where your data will be safe, no one will sell it, and then
Yeah.
profit off.
Yeah, so if I heard your whole question in terms of, like, there's always concerns of the security and the privacy,
Correct.
and then the future of AI, like, where do, how integral, or how much is AI going to be weaved into our everyday? I mean, I think we're seeing it now. I mean, the reality is that there are, there's always going to be concerns of the privacy. And I think a lot of the, especially big enterprise organizations who are bringing in the AI, are working very closely with their technology teams to make sure that they're closed environments, that there's not going to, that there's firewalls and security, that the data is going to be in a closed environment of their own, which you can even do now, per se, in your own kind of ChatGPT accounts where you can go into the settings and say, don't use my data or any of my conversations to train the external AI, just keep it in a closed environment. But the reality is that, as much as we say that you can have privacy or whatever, the reality is that privacy with an asterisk mark, right? I mean, in some senses, in this day and age in technology, it's there is not going to be 100%, removal of risk of privacy and all of those things. So that's where we have to just be smart and diligent in making sure that we create boundaries for our teams and for our organizations to say, make sure you're only using the tech stack that our company has approved so that we make sure that it stays in this closed environment. Don't, refrain from using the chat GPT on your phone to share any kind of proprietary information because it may not be as secure as it would be in organizations. So I think it's organizations making sure that they are communicating and being transparent and saying, hey, in an effort to mitigate the risk, we need to put some sort of parameters and we need to make sure that all of our people understand them and the consequences and those types of things. I think what I see for the future of AI is that in the future, I mean, we're going to see a bit of a, I like to say that a year ago, the word hybrid in people's mind meant that I'm working from home or I'm working remotely. The word hybrid is being redefined as hybrid means that you are working hand in hand with AI. So it's more like we're developing the agentic worker or the agentic human who's partnering with AI. And so everybody's going to have their own digital coworker that they're working with that helps them get their work done. And really increasing capacity so that the digital coworker, the artificial coworker, is doing a lot of the grunt work or the $10 tasks so that the human can focus on the $10,000 task in terms of the strategy, the expertise, the discernment and all of those things. And so I see a future in where we're going to be working hand in hand with the technology in order to get more work done, and at a better capacity. And so it's really going to release capacity for people. So in a given 8-hour day, you may be able to churn out 3 reports, but in partnering with AI, you can churn out a dozen reports. And so it's that, right? It's really giving you leverage and compounding your output.
Wow. Monica, what's your favorite quote?
What's my favorite quote?
Yep.
I think my favorite quote has been the one that we've been saying here lately, like a mantra. It's no longer survival of the fittest. It's survival of the fastest, and that means that we as people are going to have to embrace change and be comfortable with constantly pivoting. And so the new superpower is agility and adaptability.
Wow. How can people reach you?
People can reach me. I'm online quite a bit. LinkedIn, you can connect with me on LinkedIn, but I also have my website, Monica Marquez, themonicamarquez.com. And I have a weekly newsletter. It's called, playing on my Latino roots. It's AI, because I just, every time I talk to some of my family or friends about AI, some of them have that resistance and they're like, ay. And so I was like, what better name for a newsletter to help people get comfortable with AI? But it goes out once a week. It has practical tips on how you can apply AI in your daily work life and daily life as well. But getting you comfortable with saying, hey, here's one thing, the baby step that I can take, the one workflow, the one task that I can do, and start testing and learning for yourself.
Great. We would love to have you back on. I'm going to have Brett reach out to you and talk to you. Maybe he wins his own.
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you, and thank you again. Bye bye.
Yeah, no, I would love that. Absolutely. Would love to keep the channel open and having dialogues and brainstorming on how we all start disrupting ourselves.
Absolutely. Hopefully for the better, not for the worse.
Of course, always, right? We have to be the optimistic in everything we do and cautious in moving forward to make sure it's for the best.
Alrighty. All right, we're all done. And thank you and have a great day.